Good morning. Today I'm with a very special guest. Some of you might know that she's my partner in life. This is Ingrid King, and she's my wife. And we took a spiritual journey together. And so we wanted to share our story about how we became Baha'is and why we're Baha'is. So, good. Hi, Ingrid. Say hello to everybody.
Hi, my name is Ingrid King. I'm Jerry King's wife.
And the mother of our three children.
Yes,
And a lot of
whom
little,
are all
yeah,
grown now.
a lot of little chickens that are very, very young right now too.
Yes, you can hear them go tweet, tweet, tweet,
Yeah,
beep, beep, beep.
because there's some in the next room.
Right.
Anyway, let's share our story. How did we become Baha'is? When did that start? I don't even remember exactly what year it was. Can you remember?
No, but I do remember we started having children. And I think I want to say it was in like about 1992. I think our first child was born in 1991, but around 1992 or so. No, can't remember now. Let
That
me
sounds about
think.
right. No.
Well, anyway, it was after our first child was born. For me, uh, I always believed that there is a God, but it just meant a lot more to me after our first child was born. I thought, wow, it's such a miracle. Or more than that, it's like we're giving life to another human being. And so there must be something out there. And at the time, we were living in, um, well, after our first one was born, then we moved to New Hampshire. And while we were in New Hampshire, we started having more children. So we had a second one like 2 years after our first. And we started to church shop. I guess that's what we call it. I don't know. We were looking for a church to belong to.
Yeah, I
And do you
think,
remember that?
yeah, I remember. And so I'm thinking we're church shopping because we're wondering, well, what are we going to teach these young
Yes.
impressionable children
Yes.
about life, about God, about the
Yes.
Bible.
And a little bit of
Um,
background for me, I did not grow up with a particular religion. Uh, I did not go to church when I was young or even in my teens or young adulthood, but I always wondered about religion. I heard friends and some family talk about maybe church, a little bit about religion, but it just was not in conversations. But me as a person, I remember wondering about kind of what it's about and how could I learn more. So for me, I was beginning to seek, I guess you would call it.
yeah, and I grew up in a Christian family that went to a Methodist church, and I was a young boy and didn't really want to go to church. I wanted to play outside, and so I grew up in the Christian church, but not a very good Christian. I'll have to admit to that. And so back when we were both seeking a church, you said something about church shopping, right? So we were both looking for churches, and what did we want to teach our children about religion, about spirituality?
Right. So while we were in New Hampshire, I do remember attending a couple different churches. I don't remember the denomination exactly, but I do remember sitting through the service, and for me, it just didn't quite click. And I was like, no, that just isn't it. And I think you felt the same way. And then in our community, there's a Unitarian church. And so we started to go there, and we felt like it was a community. And I don't know, we felt comfortable there, and we brought our children there. We met a lot of folks there.
Yeah, it was a wonderful, I was in Peterborough, New Hampshire, and it was a
Okay.
wonderful spiritual community. And
Hmm.
I remember there feeling like I became more of a, I mean, there were people of different religions, um, but I remember becoming a better Christian through the Unitarian Church. And it kind of opened my eyes to other possibilities also besides Christianity. but
Right.
it did definitely strengthen my beliefs in Jesus and the Bible, and yeah.
Yeah, and I remember we had taken a couple, I don't know, some classes, and they were more about like reflection and kind of deep thinking. And for me, it just kind of awakened my inner seeking even more. It was kind of like, okay, but it just wasn't quite, I don't know, it was comfortable, but I was wanting to know a bit more, I guess. And yeah, and then before long, we moved from that state and we moved to Nebraska.
Yeah, and in Nebraska, did we do a little church shopping there too?
Well, I do remember we were looking for a Unitarian church because that is what we were kind of familiar with. And so we looked, and there was nothing to be found where we moved to in North Platte, Nebraska.
Right. I think
And
we went to some Christian.
I don't remember ever attending any specific church services in Nebraska,
I think we did
but we did look in the,
with my family, and I remember feeling like I was a
yeah.
kid again, questioning all that was being said, and do I believe this or do I not? And yeah, so
And
we
then
go ahead.
I do, yeah, as we were looking for places in North Platte, I remember we were looking in the newspaper. We received the newspaper back then. And this was, I think, in like 1999 or somewhere around there, or 98, 99.
Mhm.
And we were looking in the back of the newspaper, and we saw in the religious section, and we saw like different little ads for the different churches in town. And then we came across a very small little ad for the Baha'i Faith, and we were wondering, what is that? And do you remember what it said, more or less?
It caught my eye because it was different than all the other ones, and it talked about celebrating unity. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
what's that about? So we took the
And I
initiative
think,
to make a telephone call, and
mhm,
when we called, someone answered, and that someone was Colin Taylor, as a representative of the Baha'i Faith in the North Platte, and he said he'd come over and drop off some stuff.
yeah. And I remember we had just moved into a house that we were working on. Our kids then were, I don't know how old they were. They were young, grade school ages or so, something like that. And remember, dropped off literature, and we met outside, I think, in the driveway, and said, okay, thank you, we'll read that. And we brought it inside, and I remember we set it on the coffee table. We had a coffee table in the living room and set it there. And I know that I would pick it up once in a while, and I would read a little bit, put it back. How about you?
Yeah, it's the same here. It's like I kind of was there, I glanced at it, and then I read it, and it's like, interesting. But we didn't really follow through at that point. I think we were busy with a house construction that we were doing, remodeling that we were doing, and it was maybe a month later, and Colin came back and said, "Hey, did you have a chance to read through that material I dropped off for you? And what did you think of it?"
Right.
Yeah. And so we said, well, sounded very interesting. And I think he said something about, you want to find out more? And
Right.
you want to go to, we have these things called firesides. Do you want to go to one, and you could come to it, and maybe ask some questions if you want.
And so we did, and I'm not sure where we met. I think we met at Sandy and Ernie Dumas's house,
Yeah.
I believe,
Yeah. And
if I remember
we saw
correct.
it a
Yeah, and we
fireside. It was
gathered
gonna,
there, a few people.
remember thinking there was going to be other people there, and it was for a group of people. And what we
Oh,
realized
yeah,
is it was a fireside with some Baha'is and us. So it was
right.
really just for us to
But it
invest-
felt comfortable.
investigate the faith and to ask questions. And yeah, it felt comfortable. And that's exactly what we did. We asked lots of questions, and they
Mhm.
gave us more material. We took those materials home, some different books. And for me, the one book I remember is Thief in the Night.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's for me too.
You too? Yeah, see.
Me too.
Yeah. So we both read Thief in the Night, and boy, was that an eye opener. So it's a book about progressive revelation, and
Right.
all these things add up. All these dates and numbers and things add up about the Baha'i faith, and how, so it really opened up our eyes, and we were definitely intrigued at that point.
And meanwhile, while I don't know, some couple months or a few months had gone by, and then as we were reading, and we kept meeting at these firesides, and sometimes I remember we went to Burger King because at that point they had like a play area for our children. And so we met there quite a few times with Sandy and Ernie Dumas so that our kids could play while we had discussion. That was kind of like our little fireside there. And we were also getting to know them better too. And I think we had also picnics and so forth. And then the Colin and Heather and Sandy and Ernie and
And
um,
Heather
they
Taylor.
said
Mhm.
yes, and they said that there's a Baha'i summer school, and would you like to go? And you can bring the children. There's children classes, lots of children, lots of people from all over Nebraska, some folks from South Dakota, Kansas, Iowa. So we're like, well, yeah, okay. And for me, it was like, ooh, we get to meet some other Baha'is, friends of the Baha'is. I wonder what these people are all like.
Because the North Platte Baha'i community is very small. There's just
Hmm.
a handful of people at that time that were Baha'is in North Platte or the surrounding area. And so the opportunity to go and see what the wider community looked like was really intriguing
Yes.
to us. And that prevailed. It really opened our eyes to what the Baha'i faith is like and the diversity of the Baha'i faith and its principles of about the
Yes.
oneness of God and oneness of religions. Yeah. So
And those
I
were
enjoyed
those
the summer school.
and some of those principles, the oneness of religion and unity, um, of all like races and religions, that is something that I personally had thought about before we even became Baha'is or learned about Baha'i literature. And it was something, or information, it was something that crossed my mind. But when I had met so many Baha'is and we were talking about the unity of all religions and races, and I was like, wow, what, this is really out there, this is pretty cool. And for me, after we came back from Baha'i summer school, in my mind it was already set up for me. I was just like, that's it, this is for me.
Yeah.
This
The
is what I
same
believe, and
here.
I hadn't even talked to Jerry about this yet.
That's what I was going to say. Is the same here. I knew I was a Baha'i at that point, and I think you did too. And but we didn't really communicate that with each other until did Sandy and Ernie or somebody ask us? How did that happen? They asked us.
Yeah, I can't exactly remember. I think they did ask us about like, well, what do you think? Or do you think you're Baha'i or something? And I remember just looking at you and I was just like, yeah, I think I've been a Baha'i all along and just didn't know what to call it. And especially after summer school, I was like, yep. And then I remember you were saying the same thing, and it was like, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we just hadn't said it to each other, but yeah, of course we're
right.
Baha'is and a little surprised. I remember feeling a little surprised. Oh, you're there too. That's good. We're kind of in the same time frame. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I felt like um I know that some of the confusion in my growing up about religion, it became more clear through the Baha'i faith and the studies of the writings of Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha and the Bab. Um, and so things became more clear and it's like, oh, this makes sense. And it's like everything in my past was guiding me to this faith. And so it's
Mhm.
like it was an obvious step for us to declare that we were Baha'i. So we did
And I
that.
think,
Was it a holy day? We did that.
I
Yeah, I
can't
don't.
quite remember, but I was gonna say about the time frame, because it wasn't just like 1 week or 2 weeks, it was over, like, several months that we took our time, and I think it was in August of that year, I remember.
Of
So it was in the month of August.
August of 1999 or 2019,
I wanna say 2000, I think.
2000, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and then just I won't go into too much detail, but from
right.
there, we had always known that we wanted our children, even before learning about the Baha'i faith, we knew that we wanted
Mhm,
our children to learn about other cultures, learn another language. So we had already known that we were planning to go to Central America and maybe find an opportunity to serve and volunteer And so we basically said we're Baha'is, but we're leaving. And they said, "Oh,
Right.
you're going travel teaching." So we didn't know what travel teaching was, but we were gonna go to Central America, travel, and see if we could find a place
Mhm.
to volunteer, which we did. And we went and shared, in some places we were able to share about our faith, newly learned about faith and why we became Baha'is. Um,
And
but
we also met some of the local people in Central America. We spent some time in Belize and in Guatemala, but we met some local Baha'is, not just pioneers. We met pioneers too, a few, but the local Baha'is. And for me, what was interesting was like, wow, uh, we're in a different country and different culture, and but yet these Baha'is all think alike. And it was like, wow, this is incredible. So
yeah,
that was even more of a confirmation for me.
yeah. And so we had planned on doing that for a number of years. Well, God had other plans for us. He wanted
Right.
us back in North Platte. And so as things turned out, we had to give up on that, um, those travels and our hopes of staying in Central America for more than a year. And we went back to the United States and
Mm.
in the Baha'i community. And at that point, there were enough Baha'is to form an assembly in North Platte, which is 9 adult Baha'is. And so we were part of the North Platte Assembly. And so
Right.
we deepened, I think, and became stronger Baha'is through that,
Most definitely.
uh,
Yes.
through that, um, through being a part of the spiritual assembly as well as our studies of reading books and talking with other Baha'is.
And
Um,
also our children participated in, of course, the
children's
feasts
classes.
and also in children's classes. And we went to more of the local Baha'i summer schools. And so, yeah, we deepened more.
But we didn't put
Yeah.
that thought completely out of our minds of living in another country because about 5 years later, we decided when we heard about the temple construction in Chile. I have a background in construction. I really wanted to be a part of the temple construction. So we talked about it and we decided to pioneer to Chile. So we contacted the National Spiritual Assembly there and they said, yes, we could pioneer there, although they didn't know whether we could be a part of the temple construction project. But we backed
Right.
things up and 2005, we moved to Chile. And at that point, the construction hadn't started yet. And we had told our families we'd be there for 3 to 4 years, but that didn't turn out. The temple construction didn't start for about 5 years after we got there. And
Hmm.
luckily, and not probably not luck, but with a lot of prayers, um,
Right.
I got a call to help out with some of the construction projects at the very beginning of the construction of the Chilean temple, the Temple of Light. And I was involved in it until its completion in 2016. And Ingrid and I were also a part of the Baha'i community. We also taught English classes.
Right. And we lived in a small community in Santiago. It was outside of the, well, kind of on the outskirts of the metropolitan area. So it was also, we were there with a very small Baha'i community. We did have an assembly at first, and then some of the pioneers moved on to a different area, and yeah, but we did do, Ruhi classes and children's classes. I did some virtues in the school that I was teaching in. And then we would participate regularly in the other part of Santiago. We would have to travel, and our kids went with us and participated in the feasts and holy days and summer schools. We went to summer schools there too, and
It was
deepened even more. And
wonderful. It was, excuse me, it was just wonderful being a part of the larger community as the temple was being
yeah. Hmm.
constructed. So was the community being uplifted and a lot of activities going
Yeah.
on. So it was really wonderful to be a part of all of that.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think it was, we had a lot of challenges being in a foreign country.
Yeah.
Won't go into details about all of those, but a lot of challenges, a lot of wonderful things happened, a lot of confirmations. But it was our love for Baha'u'llah, the Blessed Beauty, that kept us there
Yes, very
and
much so.
sustained us through that time so that we could be there. We were there for 11 years before
Right.
we came back to the US.
Right.
And now we're back in North Platte, Nebraska again, and there's not
And
enough
it worked.
Baha'i, but hopefully in time there'll be more Baha'is coming into the Baha'i community in North Platte, and we'll form another assembly here. God willing.
Right. Right. Right.
So Ingrid, I always ask, as it's great to hear about people's stories of how they became Baha'is, but I always ask, why did you, or why are you a Baha'i now? After learning about the Baha'i and declaring you're a Baha'i, so why are you still a Baha'i?
Why am I still Baha'i? Because I still believe deeply in the main principles of the Baha'i Faith. And so one of those is unity, unity of, or the oneness, I would say, of religions, the oneness of humanity, equality for men and women, just the love for Baha'u'llah. Uh, and for me, right now, I'm studying more of the Bob's writings, and it's just bringing me even more closer to it in my heart. Um, yeah, just the whole revelation
Mhm.
of the Bob and Baha'u'llah for humanity.
Yeah, and for me, it's the love of the through the reading of the writings of the Bab Abdul Baha'u'llah. It always strengthens me, and it confirms that this is um, Baha'u'llah's revelation is the revelation for this day and age, and the chaos we're seeing in the world is only going to change through more people following the revelation of Baha'u'llah and promoting peace throughout the world. And
Yes.
yeah,
And starting in our communities. I mean, starting in your family, your neighbors, your community. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, thanks, Ingrid, for helping me share my story and our story, because it was together and it continues together through this world and into the next.
To the next.
All
Yeah, it was
right.
a pleasure.
Okay. We're going to wrap it up for there. Thank you. And
Thank you.
have a great day, everybody.
Bye bye.